Hello, this is Greg Allison, Galactic Greg's, coming to you on 28 July 22. Time on deck is 1840 hours Central Daylight Time. My friends, China has plans to leave SpaceX and even NASA's Artemis booster in the dust. And you're going, Greg, really? How can that be? We're going to go over that. We're going to talk all about that. And we're going to talk also about there's still a glimmer of hope for SpaceX. It's got another thing up its sleeve that might bail it out of being left in the dust by these so-called plans from China. So yeah, I'm doing this video in part because a lot of you had left comments where I posted some of my China videos and some of the news groups on Facebook and some other places saying, China's so primitive, they can't do anything, blah, 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 blah. Well, just hold on to your socks, guys. See what China's really planning, see what they may have in store. Something that we better pay attention to. Now, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, bang the update notification bell, and click all, because I'm going to bring you a lot more news. And I think this is a preliminary video to the video I'm going to do about China's moon plans, why China absolutely wants the moon and how they can use the moon to dominate Earth, and why they may really want to do it for that reason. I mean, from the moon, China could actually dominate this planet. And even though you may think, well, Greg, they couldn't do it, they possibly not. Well, no, they just might. So just hang on and listen to what I got to say here about the boosters first, and then I'll do that in a future follow-up video. Hey, moon minds matter much. Okay, guys. So here it is. China's now designing a reusable version of what's called their Long March 9 super heavy rocket for future mega projects. Now, the Long March 9 is itself a future rocket. Oh, yeah, by the way, we're also going to talk about not only a glimmer of hope still for SpaceX, but we're going to cover a little bit of this latest news with the Long March 5B booster, which is probably going to re-enter Earth the last day of this month, the 31st of July. More to come on that toward the end of this video. So hang on to your belts, guys. Anyway, like I said, China is now designing a fully reusable version of this Long March 9 booster, which is their next booster, by the way. It's their heavy lift booster. In fact, the new plan for this reusable booster is for it to be a methane liquid oxygen launch vehicle, and it's to be ready by 2035, the reusable one. Their Long March 9 is to be ready by 2030. Both vehicles are very formidable. So hang on, guys. China is looking to make significant changes in their space transportation systems. Yeah, both the expendable and the reusable boosters are both huge, major changes. Either one can outperform, at least in lift weight, anything Artemis has planned or Starship. So just hang on, buckle up, guys. You got to hear all this. So China's government actually approved plans last year for the continued development of this heavy lift launcher known as the Long March 9. The expendable launcher is planned to be operational by 2030, in time for China to launch their huge mega project ideas, including their International Lunar Research Station. Yeah, and what is that station going to be? We got to do a whole video on that. This new giant rocket will consist of 3 stages and 4 side boosters, with the first stage and boosters using kerosene and liquid oxygen propellant mixes initially, but not the reusable one. However, China's Long March rocket designer, Long Leihao, if I'm saying that right, just presented a new concept for a fully reusable 2-stage launcher in a public lecture. And this is what he says they're developing. So the first stage of this new reusable booster is to be 10.6 meters in diameter. That's roughly 34.77 feet. And it would be powered by 26 clustered 200-ton thrust Methalox engines for a total thrust of 10.4 million pounds. It would be capable of carrying 150 tons of payload to low Earth orbit, or 65 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit, or 50 tons to a translunar injection. 50 tons at the surface of the moon, guys. That's huge. For comparison, the diameter of the space shuttle external tank and the Artemis core stage is 27 feet. The diameter of the Starship is 30 feet. The diameter of the Saturn V first stage, the S1C, was 34 feet. So this is bigger than all of those in diameter, at least. The Saturn V produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust, and the SpaceX Starship is to produce 16 million pounds of thrust. So the SpaceX Starship's got more thrust, it seems, so it should have more throw weight, but that's not what they advertise. Okay, so the new reusable Long March could theoretically, hang on. So think about it. Let's go back to it. The Long March was talking about lifting 150 tons. SpaceX is talking about, with their Starship, 100 tons, 220,000 pounds to low Earth orbit. So this new Long March rocket could theoretically loft 1.5 times as much as the SpaceX Starship. The Artemis Block 1 is planned to launch 95 metric tons, the Artemis, which is 209,000 pounds. The Artemis Block 1B is slated to launch 105 metric tons, 231,000 pounds. And the Artemis Block 2 is designed to be able to launch 130 metric tons or 290,000 pounds. So 130 metric tons for Artemis Block 1B, and the older expendable, I say older, it hasn't been built yet, the initial Long March 9 is intended to launch 150 tons to low Earth orbit. 150 versus 100 for Starship and 130 for the Artemis Block 2. Wow. So the Artemis Block 2 is 20 tons shy of what the Chinese launcher proposes to do. So this new Chinese launcher outperforms them all. Well, okay, let me back that out. That is the reusable one. That is a reusable launcher that's supposed to get 150 tons. The expendable one is supposed to launch 140 tons. Pardon me, guys. I'm getting my hairs crossed because I started talking about the reusable one already. So here we go. So Long, the Chinese developer, yeah, that's really the Long March developer's name, Long. He revealed that the new launcher would be ready by 2035. We're talking about the reusable one. The Long March expendable is to be ready by 2030. That's 140 tons. This one, the reusable, is 150 tons. So, and reusable, so it should be cheaper. Although anything in China is relative, their labor rates are different. So, and he's also claiming it will be developed in parallel with the expendable version of the Long March 9. Now, I'm really wondering if they're going to call it Long March 10 or something else, because one is, they're calling them both Long March 9. They're very similar in capability overall, but, why they're both Long March 9s. We'll see how that pans out. So the largest variant, apparently including the third stage, would have a length of 110 meters at takeoff and a mass of 4,122 tons. That's just 10 meters shy of the Starship, SpaceX Starship length, because it's going to be 120 meters. Okay, so really, how's it going to be able to outperform? Well, you just got to run all the engines and all the curves and all that. They're claiming it'll outperform Starship. So this new concept would be a dramatic departure from both the expendable model of Long March 9 and the version with a reusable first stage presented last year, which was a fully reusable goal for a booster that China had. So one of the advantages of this methane liquid oxygen engine is that it reduces soot formation and coking, making its reusability much easier, less cleanup, less problems with the injectors and everything in the engine head. So the power head of the engine. So it follows the trend of SpaceX and Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, and switching to a methane fuel. So China is on that bandwagon now, and that's what they would use for the reusable system, okay? China's propulsion institutes have been working on methane engines for quite some time now. So it makes us this change plans much more feasible. Now we'll go back to Long March evolution. So let's talk about, the first Long March coming out the gates. This expendable Long March, the original expendable Long March 9. It's no joke of a rocket. It's expected to be around 103 meters long, featuring a 10-meter diameter core, and have a massive liftoff of 4,140 metric tons. Yeah, remember, this guy's got boosters strapped onto it, whereas the reusable one, not so much. So, again, this SpaceX, this Long March 9 expendable is to be capable of lifting 140 tons to Earth orbit or 50 tons to translunar injection. Sounds like the other one I just read, right? So again, the SpaceX Starship plans to launch 100 tons to low Earth orbit. So even the expendable Long March 9 has more payload capacity than either the SpaceX Starship or Artemis Block 2's rocket. But now let's see. The first stage and boosters of the initial expendable Long March is to be powered by a dual nozzle, 500-ton thrust kerosene liquid oxygen YF-130 engines, a 220-ton thrust liquid liquid oxygen staged combustion cycle, the YF-90 engine, will be used to power the second stage. Vacuum optimized hydrolytic engines will be used on the third stage. That's their expendable rocket. So, as a more economical launcher, the reusable version of the Long March 9 could support China's proposed space-based power stations. They're talking about putting power stations, beaming power Earth from space. And I think that's a pipe dream, but I got a lot of my friends don't think so. Anyway, China's plan for their first stage, the heavy lift rocket, is to be capable. Their plans for the three-stage heavy lift rocket is to be capable of sending Chinese astronauts to the moon. Pardon me, my voice is all messed up. I still got the COVID, guys. I'm still recovering. The two-stage version is for low Earth orbit and could have its first flight in 2036. So this expendable rocket could have a two-stage version, low Earth orbit version, fly in 2026, the three-stage version in 2030, and the reusable version in 2035. And that's the one that's meant totally reusable. They're clearly trying to outcompete SpaceX with more throw weight, totally reusable. They're probably figuring the Chinese labor rates are going to be less, so they will probably figure they can come in under cost of SpaceX. But never fear, SpaceX fans, as Elon Musk plans Starship 2.0. And that might be up to 8 times bigger than the first Starship. It will be at least twice the height and diameter of the original Starship. So we're talking about 20 meters or something like maybe 65 foot in diameter and around 800 feet tall. Wow, right? Starship 2.0 is said that it will be capable of carrying 1,000 tons of payload every launch. Or they're talking about 1,000 passengers all the way to Mars. So I assume there's some on-orbit refueling to make that happen. But wow, Musk believes that he can launch this huge Starship for under $10 million. We're talking $2 million for the Starship that gets 100 tons to orbit, but $10 million for 1,000 tons to orbit. So yeah, okay, so that seems like a good multiplier. So it's like, $10,000 per ton. I mean, right now, with the conventional rockets before Elon Musk come on, we were paying $15,000 a pound. So I don't know, $10,000 a ton. Wow. So when will this Starship 2.0 come online? Well, first, of course, Starship 1.0 has to work. So all I can say, let's hope this happens soon. Because with China hot on our tail with the kind of plans they're planning and what they're thinking about from the moon base, guys, we can't trust China. And we need to have capability, and we don't need to be eating their dust. So this is critical. It's important. And some of you say, well, Greg, China, come on, guys. Hey, China is in economic trouble. China's having severe economic troubles right now with their money, their banking, with their real estate, with manufacturing markets. They're having a lot of trouble and got countries leaving or other manufacturers leaving China because it's no longer a reliable place to manufacture. But still, think about this. Before you write them off, look at North Korea, the Hermit Kingdom, the poorest dadgum country on earth. I mean, if you look at them, the satellite is dark. They don't even have lights. Yet, these poor, starving people in North Korea have produced quite a nuclear missile program. Wow. They have submarines. They have a huge military. They're rather Spartan. So, before you write China off and say they can't build these things, it's a matter of willpower. If they're really willing to invest in it and got a fraction of the commitment the North Koreans have in their nuclear program, well, the realization of what they could actually accomplish by dominating the moon, I would say there's a darn good chance they'll go for it anyway. So just hang on your hats, guys. This could be huge if they don't blow the world up between now and then. Anyway, so yeah, other news. Let's kind of talk about some of the other things going on here with this Long March 9 rocket. So some of you might be knowledgeable. The Long March 5B heavy lift rocket put a 58.7-foot module on the Tiangong space station, which means Tiangong Heavenly Palace in Chinese, as I understand it. You may say, Greg, their space station looks like Mir or no Soyuz Salyut space station. Well, it does have the basic kind of interconnect technology. They did get the technology from Russia, but if you look inside the space station, it looks modern inside. It don't look as cluttered with all the feed-through tubes and everything that the Russians have used on their space stations. Even what their piece of our International Space Station is really just Mir 2.0. So they're really ahead of them with internal architecture layout. It looks a lot more modern, but moreover, this module is 58.7 foot long. It just so happens that none of the modules we launched to ISS, International Space Station, were over 40 foot long. So they were actually able to launch a longer module. Now, the real reason that we couldn't, the Space Shuttle external payload bay was 65 feet. But the reason we couldn't launch a 65-foot module, I think we originally were thinking 60 foot, is because of the CG problems. If we launched and the space shuttle was to have to abort to another landing site, return to landing site with that module in the back, it would have messed up the CG on landing. It was too long. They found that they really couldn't handle that. So we didn't launch modules over 40 foot long. So, before you throw too much rocks at the Tiangong space station, it is interesting that they do have a 58.7 foot long module. Now, as you may know, that they set their spacecraft up that docked that module, and it has re-entered the atmosphere now. But the booster, the 5B booster, well, that's a whole different thing. It's still floating around, and NASA had accused Russia in the past of being rather lackadaisy in their regards to safety in this regard. And so you got the same thing happening again, because this booster is uncontrolled. And actually right now, it's predicted that it will come down the 31st of July. So 31st of this month, in just a couple of days, they're expecting about 3 days from now, they're expecting this thing to come down. And, there's been some analysis saying, hey, chances of somebody being killed by an out of control Chinese booster is much higher than it should be. Of course, it should be zero. They should have controlled this thing and put it in the drink, but they didn't really care to do that because Chinese just they're not the most caring people anymore. You got to remember, a previous version of this booster landed in the village once and really fried their village. And so they just kind of swept all that under the rug. So just keep this in mind, guys. Uh, China don't have the same regard to human life that Western people have. And so to them, they're just launching the stuff for expediency, and they're figuring the chances of us hitting anybody are pretty low, but it might not be. So I'm sure we're going to have a big watch on the 31st. Everybody watching to see this booster come in and where it lands. So that's going to be an interesting little exercise, and I might join in on that possibly. All right, guys. Well, that's the latest news. China's expanding their space station. Russia's looking at pulling out of our space station. And I can go over that more in the future, that particular thing. And they have a ginormous Long March 9 expendable vehicle coming up and a reusable vehicle. And before you write them off, don't do it yet. As George W. Bush used to say, never underestimate your enemy. Double negative. That kind of means do it, right? That's why Bush was, he said that on purpose, made it kind of funny, I guess, hamming it up, trying to sound like a redneck. Anyway, so much Bushes to try to be rednecks, right? It, coming out of where they came out of. But anyway, all that said, my friends, for that, I want to say thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Now that I've demonstrated to you that Russia's got plans, not Russia, China has plans for ginormous boosters. Now you're going to have to watch and see my discussion about what they might do on the moon and why that matters. So with that said, I'm going to say thank you for watching. Greg out.